Okay, everyone. So, welcome to this session. This is the first time we've tried to run a session like this. This is Stories That Sell. And the idea is to go through in 6 weeks a number of different tactics and say, okay, this is how you can start to develop stories that will help you sell something. Now, the something you're selling could be product or service. So it could be, classical selling, a commercial venture. Um, Equally, though, it could be you trying to sell your idea to somebody. So if you're working in a large organization, you've got colleagues, you've got bosses who you need to sell your idea to. Well, it's a similar kind of thing, similar kind of process. So that's the idea of selling. It's not just commercial, selling product and service. It may also mean selling your idea. There are two cards that I want to look at in this session from Storyteller Tactics. The first one is called What's It About? And what's it about is the card that encourages you to be that person who can get straight to the point when you're talking about, okay, what is it you do? So, what is it your business does? That kind of question. Or some friend of your mum's says, "So what's he doing these days?" And you, okay, so what's it about? It's a really key, excuse me, really key card. It's focusing on getting to the point, and it's doing so by looking at what are stories about. So, okay, on the back of the card, it suggests that stories are very often about three main things. And there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is to do with the way we pay attention to the world. So the first thing this card invites you to think about is, okay, it's about change. Okay, the thing you're working on, the thing you need to tell us about is, and it's up to you to frame it in this way, it's about change. And there's a reason for that. The reason is when things don't change, we don't pay attention to them. Right. So some script writer and Hollywood script writer said one time, no one in a movie ever shouts, "Look out for that slow-moving glacier." Right? Because it's not a threat. It's moving slowly. It's not changing. Okay, so the question then is, how do you frame what you're talking about to make it about change? Well, it is a framing device. So you can think, okay, well, what's changing around us? So we all went through between 2020 and 2022, 23, we all went through a period of enormous change due to the pandemic. And so it was quite easy to frame stories then in relation to change because everything was changing really fast around us. You could say the same about AI now, that it's really easy to frame a story. What am I doing? Well, I'm doing this. Why am I doing it? Because AI is changing yeah, AI is changing the IT scene. And therefore, our IT team needs to be, yeah, okay, you get the idea. So when you're looking at this card, and on the back of the card, it says, okay, we don't just pay attention, excuse me, we don't pay attention to things that stay the same. We notice change. So, two options. Either you are responding to an external change or threat or opportunity, I suppose. You're responding to something from the outside coming in. So, AI, COVID, great examples of external threat. The war in Ukraine, inflation. All of these are external threats coming in. Your competitors, external threat. Or you're initiating something from the inside, saying, okay, there's an opportunity here right in our grasp. There's something we could be changing, something we could be doing differently. So that's a great framing device. And on the card, it says, look, if you want to go a bit deeper on this idea of story is about change, take a look at the Dragon and the City. Now, these little references, that's the Dragon and the City, because that's all about change. Now, these little references you see on the cards, they're just suggestions. You don't have to go off and look at the Dragon and the City, but if you're intrigued by this idea of change, that's where to go. Okay, the next category, the next way of framing your work, your facts, your opinion, the next way of framing it is to talk about new information. Because as humans, we're kind of programmed, we're hungry for new information, we're curious for new information. It's a kind of evolutionary thing, that we're really curious about what's over the next hill, what's in that box, what's in the corner. All you need to do to make somebody curious, looking around for an example, all you need to do is to show them a box that's closed and go, do you want to know what's inside the box? It's like Pandora. Yeah, it's one of the oldest stories. This is why in YouTube, unboxing is a thing. Yeah. The minute you do that with a box and start to lift the lid off, we want to know what's inside it because that's new information. All of this stuff around us is old information. So give us some new information. So the way you can do it in framing terms is, okay, you've realized something new. You've spotted something isn't right. Excuse me, very interesting how we give off, when you're telling a story, you can give off kind of story signals. So here's an example. If somebody says to you, I always used to think, right, doesn't matter what they think. I always used to think, blah, blah, blah. Here's what they don't say next. And I still do. No one says, I always used to think, and I still do. Well, what's the point of telling us? Yeah? If you say, I always used to think, the next thing that's coming is new information. But then, da, da, da. So it's like a signal. Or everyone always says, well, no one ever says, everyone always says blah, 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 and they're probably right. Oh, why would you do that? So you don't. So there are little signals you can drop into conversation, which immediately, it's like they are signaling that new information is coming. And that's really key. So the way you start a sentence, the way you start a headline on an email, the way you start a blog post, the way you start something on TikTok, yeah, you can drop a signal that new information is coming. Everyone says blah, 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 but I don't. Right. You get the idea. So you're signaling new information. Right. Finally, excuse me. Finally, the other way of thinking about what's it about is to think about personal benefit. And so no matter how abstract, how research-based, how much of a dissertation, how scientific, how IT-ish, yeah, how theoretical, no matter how tricky and detailed your knowledge is, somewhere down the line, somebody benefits. They have to, otherwise why are you doing it? Well, you might be doing it because you're just curious, I suppose. But somewhere down the line, somebody benefits. Somebody gets a payoff. So, okay, ultimately, I'm trying to help X achieve Y. This is part of a wider problem I'm solving for you. So it's about framing what you're talking about in terms of the benefit. Now, it can be, obviously, you can talk about the benefit for anyone, Hard to argue the benefits for humanity as a whole, because that's just a bit too big. But you can argue, look, this is somebody out there is benefiting from this. Even better, if the person you're talking to is benefiting from this, that's fantastic. Because they're going, ooh, okay. Self-interest is quite powerful. Okay, so that's what's it about. And what's it about is a framing device. So you can use it in one of two ways. You can either think, okay, broadly speaking, this is where I should be heading with my story. It's broadly about change, new information, or personal benefit. That's one way of thinking about it. Second way you can think about it is, no, my opening line, the first thing I say, the first 3 seconds of my video on TikTok is going to be about change, new information, or personal benefit. Right. So it's a framing device for generally thinking about where you're going. It's an opening line if you want to use it that way. Okay, so that's what's it about. Very useful. Okay. Then you get into the actual story. So you've given us the frame. You've given us the opening line. Now you get into the story rather than just a bunch of facts. Okay. And this is movie time. It's probably one of the most useful cards in the deck. And in fact, we're going to use movie time again and again and again during the 6 weeks for that reason. Okay, movie time basically is Stories work when they start a movie playing in my head. If what you're saying is not starting a movie in my head, it's not a story. Okay, give you a little very quick example. Everyone imagine you're in the Arctic. It's a bright sunny day. There's snow everywhere. You're crunching through the snow, right? And as you come over a snowy little hill, you see a polar bear. And what's more, the polar bear sees you, right? And it comes running towards you, blood dripping from its fangs. Ah! And you go, and you turn around and you run like crazy. Okay, that's a little story. It hasn't ended. Well, you make up your own ending, but that's a little story. Now, what's interesting is none of you have been to the Arctic or actually seen a polar bear in real life. Well, hands up if you have. But in your heads, you could see the snow, you could hear the snow crunching, you could feel the cold, you could see the polar bear, you could feel the fear. But you were just processing the words. But you're processing the words using your visual cortex. Yep. You literally see what I mean. You process the words using your motor neurons. Your arms and legs, your muscles of your arms and legs are ready to run as a result of that story. You process the meaning using your emotions. So when you give us the movie, we absorb it into our entire bodies. That's why we remember stories, as opposed to giving us the facts, the high level stuff. Okay, so 3 ingredients of story time, of movie time are, appropriately enough, action. Yep. What's happened? Where are we? What's going on? What happens next? Directors in Hollywood don't shout concept or theory or fact. They shout action. No action, no story. Okay, second ingredient, emotion. Who's involved? What's at stake? How does it feel? How does it feel before, during, and after? This is the bit that a lot of people who are writing in business, so Sandeep's IT team, my guess is they never write about emotion. Yeah, they just don't do it. Therefore, they're very forgettable because we focus on emotions. I'll tell you what, though, I bet they feel plenty of emotions. Yeah, frustration, anger, relief, yeah, curiosity. Of course they do. Okay, so leave out the emotion. You're inviting people to forget what you've just said. Finally, once you've given people the movie, you've given them the action, you've given them the emotion, you're then allowed to give them the meaning. So the moral of the story comes after the movie bit. So the moral of the story of the polar bear is don't go wandering off by yourself in the Arctic. Okay. But you'll believe me now because I'm telling you I got chased by a polar bear. I didn't really, but you get the idea. Great thing about movie time stories, by the way, fantastic thing about this is they work in 2 ways. I should have said this on the card, really. Anyway, you can tell a movie time story. There are 2 words that trigger the story. First word, just imagine. If you say to somebody, just imagine, you're then going to tell them a story that could happen in the future. Or you say, for example, and you're then going to tell them a story that's happened in the past. Either way, they're movie time stories. So listen, what I'm going to ask you to do now is to go into breakouts for 10 minutes. In those breakouts, I want you to think about, first of all, framing your story using what's it about. Yep. Secondly, so it's about X. For example, little movie time moment. Okay. And then what I'll ask you to do then is to come back after 10 minutes and to have a go and just explain. We'll get through as many as we can, and I'll give feedback on as many as we can. And then we'll see how we're doing for time. Any questions before we break? Good. Right, I want to stop recording, pause recording. Oh, so So listen, I'm aware that I've asked you to do quite a lot in just 10 minutes. So just so you know, what the plan is that I'm going to listen to some of the stories now and give some feedback. But between now and week 2, your homework is to carry on working on your own story. So your own individual story using this framework that you're going to bring back into next week. And then we're going to add a story hook onto that story and get it down to 60 seconds. Okay, so that's the plan.
Oh, and Steve, if I may suggest, putting in the chat, taking notes on your own feedback, perhaps.
Yes, please. Yes,
Everybody
please.
else.
Yes, please. So if you're listening, if you're from a different group, you're listening to another group story, please leave your comments in the chat. Can I just very quickly check? Is anyone on a really hard time deadline got to be finished on the hour? If so, I'll come to you first. If not, we might run over by 5 minutes. Anybody on a hard out? Lovely.
Like me.
Jerry, was that you? You are. You're okay. Brilliant. Okay. Okay. Okay, so who'd like to go for? I'm going to, shall I just pick breakout group 1. Who was in breakout group 1? Hold on a second. So that was Shari, Chris, Marie, and Jacqueline and Sandeep. Whose story did you end up going with?
Jacqueline has a story for us.
Okay, go ahead. Go, Jacqueline.
Okay, I must admit I am a little bit nervous. So give me a second. So my story is about the business that I am going to be proposing or opening up. I have a studio idea to do as a sip and paint studio in Puerto Rico that is not only going to be teaching people how to paint generic paintings, but it's actually going to be paintings of the history of the Taínos, which were the natives that lived on the island. So instead of just having tourists come in and just have like little trinkets of the petroglyphs that you would see at little kiosks and buying stuff about the Taínos, you would actually come to the studio as a tourist. You'd get off of the cruise ship that you came on. You would go through the island. If you want to come to the studio, you would not only paint what you would see from the petroglyphs that the Taínos wrote on all the cave walls, but you would actually be able to have this wonderful experience of painting with some reggaeton, some salsa, having some Puerto Rican music going on, and learning about the culture of the island.
Brilliant.
And
okay.
they would feel more connected to the island.
Okay, so let's give some feedback. So clearly there is a movie playing, yes? So we can now, how do you make the movie sharper, in sharper focus? You talk about tourists. So your ideal customers are tourists, yes, arriving on the boats, for example. Okay, now here's the thing. What do tourists, plural, look like? Well, there's hundreds of them, thousands of them. It's very hard to see a plural. We can see individuals really well. Yeah. Now, there's 2 ways of doing it. One is to go, look, imagine you're a tourist, you've come to Puerto Rico. Now, straight away, I'm seeing me in the movie. Right, and I can see what I look like. I know what I look like. So that's good. So so now the movie's in focus because you're using second person pronouns, you. Imagine you're a tourist, you've come to Puerto Rico, you come to my studio. Okay. Yep. Now that movie is now in sharp focus. Rather than talking about tourists will come. Well, that could look like anything. Could look a busload. It could look like 1,000. I don't know what it looks like. Get it down to one person. And there's 2 ways of doing it. Either say, you come to my studio. You'll get salsa. You'll get food. You'll learn to paint the same glyphs that the natives of this island, and you'll do it the way they did it. Okay. So I'm now in the movie. I'm in the movie. It's fantastic. And I'm tasting the food and I'm listening to the music and I'm doing the painting with my hands. So yes, you're getting the movie running. But keep the focus. You can't film tourists. Yep. You can film a tourist. Well, you can't empathize with tourists. You can empathize with one tourist. Okay. And if that one tourist is me, yeah, I'm on board because I'm selfish and yeah, okay. So that's how I would sharpen up the focus. And then the Okay, and here's the interesting thing: the on the what's it about the framing? Is there something here now? Obviously, there's a kind of personal benefit. Look, me as a tourist, I'm going to have a nice time. Okay. Well, is there something also about new information here? Is there something about we know stuff about the past now that we didn't know before? I don't know. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But if you can find something, that's adding interest. Is there something about the way tourism is changing? That tourists want different things. They don't just want to buy some trinkets and move on. The tourists want something different. I don't know. So those will also give you a way of thinking about the framing of the story. But as it is, there's a movie in there, and I think you can sharpen up the focus. Anybody else got any thoughts? If you want to leave some comments in the chat, that might be quicker. So Tim's saying connecting with the cultural history. And so is there a trend? Is there a change in the way tourists are behaving that you can say, I'm part of this change? Yeah, it's allowing you to frame the story. Okay, brilliant, Jacqueline. Thank you very much. So into room 2, we had Burge, Nicole, and Tim. Which story we're going to share?
Hello.
Hello, Nicole.
Okay. Hello. And I'm really grateful the guys are letting me share my story. All right. This is rough. Just imagine you're at home with your family, surrounded by people, yet have this overwhelming sense of loneliness. The button pusher is none other than your mom, approaching you with a mental list of potential stressors, speaking to you as if you're still 12 years old. Picture being able to deflect her negativity and turn to your angel, your guide, your light for support. If you've ever felt this emotional weight or can relate to someone who has, finding your angel is the perfect guide to liberate yourself from these familiar triggers.
Okay, very good. Okay, very good. Listen, there's something really right. So clearly there's a movie scene, yes? Right. As you're speaking, everyone is picturing a room in a house with family in it. Right? Because you've made us do it. You've told us, you actually used the word picture yourself. And we were, oh, okay, we will do then. Right. That's how story works. You put us in the movie. And then you add, so you give us a time and a place. Maybe it's Christmas. I don't know, whatever it is, doesn't matter. So you give us a little tiny bits of detail. The telly's on and everyone's eating too much food. But then your mum comes over and she's talking to you like you're 12. Okay. So you're into the emotional side. Okay. So it's right. That's working. That is a movie scene. You could pick up a camera and you could go out and film that right now. Okay. So what you're doing by using movie time in this way is you're speaking to our mind's eye. You're speaking to the camera inside our heads, and you're inviting us to point, the camera inside our heads at things that you're describing. The great thing about this is there used to be a saying in when I worked in the BBC, and I worked in television and radio, and I used to say to the radio reporters, why don't you want to be on telly? Why are you happy being on radio? Because I thought TV was like where all the glamour was. And a very experienced radio reporter said, radio has the best pictures. Right. Yeah, because we make them in our heads. And we can picture ourselves in lots of different places very, very easily. And our pictures are better than anyone else's. That's why when when that thing, when you've read a really good book and you go to the cinema and you watch the film and you come out going, not as good as I thought it was going to be. My film in my head was better. One exception there being Lord of the Rings, which is just as good as the book. Okay, apart from that, right? Okay, so that's why, because the pictures we make in our heads are way better. Okay, so brilliant. And then what you've done there, interestingly, is and this is completely fine. You've started with movie time, and then you've told us why. Yeah. If you felt this, then this book is for you. Personal benefit. That's fine. It's absolutely fine. You can either start with the what's it about, and then come to the movie, or You can start with the movie and then tell us what it doesn't matter. Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, to breakout group 3, so we had Clark and Larry.
Do you want to go?
Sure, I'll babble about this. So basically, we discussed how art is so critical in shaping and creating our world, from individual perspectives to the impact on the community as a whole. You need to bring art into everything you do. So imagine, to frame this, imagine yourself going to the gym, a place packed with people, and yet everybody in their own little world isolated. So you join in with that isolation. That in itself is a strange concept, joining in isolation, but that's what's happening. As you put in your earbuds, you listen to something that carries you to a different place. And that's where art comes in. In your striving to be alone in a crowded place, you're hiding with the music or whatever it is, the podcast that you're listening to. And art shows itself in everything we do. And to better yourself and to better your community, you should be focused on the art experiences that we can share together.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Listen, there's some really interesting things there. What I like here is, again, you're going into the movie first, and then you're kind of coming to the what. So it's, interesting way of doing it. Movie first, then the what's it about. What I'm not quite getting is the connection. I get it. So there's something you're absolutely right about joining in the isolation. That's a nice line. It's like it's rich in irony. How do you join in and yet also remain isolated? There's what's slightly missing, and I only gave you a few minutes, so I'm not surprised. What is slightly missing is so you've painted a really good picture of. There's that great book on social capital called Bowling Alone, where people go bowling and they go by themselves. Again, it's a great example of how 2 words can tell a very rich story. Bowling alone. Why would you go bowling alone? Okay. Okay, so we plug in to isolate ourselves whilst we're joining in. Isn't that weird? Yes, it is weird. Okay, so what's missing slightly from this, I think, still is, okay, and I'm now going to give you the opportunity to do something different. So I'm going to give art is going to give you the opportunity to join in without isolating yourself. Is that am I getting that right? Is that where you're heading with it?
Where we were going was in the idea of art enhances experiences in all realms. And one of the things that Clark said to me that really had an impact was in trying to, I'm paraphrasing, so you might want to correct me. But basically the idea that in order to change our world and to affect the world, we have to affect ourselves first. So Clark is a yoga instructor. He's teaching yoga, and a lot of people in the yoga world seem to be focused on the world as a whole and but work on yourself and then look out. So we were kind of going with the art as an inner piece that and then bridging. So we ran it.
Okay, so listen, there's what you're starting to do here is actually, what's quite interesting, is that there's 2 movies there's 2 movies in sequence, and the first one's well developed and the second one isn't. So the first one is the movie of the problem, yes, and that's being in the gym, joining in whilst isolating yourself, right? And we can all see that, we can all imagine it, we can all feel it, right? Maybe we've all done it. It's like the thing about being in an open plan office and everyone's got earphones on. What's that all about? Okay, so you paint that picture really well. You're then explaining what's it about is art has the ability to unite us, has the ability to give us these kind of connected experiences, which is the what's it about bit. But there's almost like there needs to be now a second movie, which is, so art has this amazing ability to bring us together. For example, and then that's where the second movie comes in. So the first movie, if you like, is the problem. Then you've got what I'm doing is trying to do something. I'm trying to change things. And what's really interesting is, if you're talking about change and new information, what we learned during the pandemic was we bloody well need people. We really do. Okay. For example, art can do this. One example: in a gallery, in a space, in a school, in a hospital, you go into a moment to show the benefit. So you've got a moment showing the problem. You do the same with a moment showing the benefit. Okay. I hope that makes sense. So listen, the plan now is you've got this framework here, which is 2 cards. So what's it about movie time? And the idea is you've played around and heard a bit of feedback on focusing up and sharpening up the focus on your movie and sharpening up the focus on the what's it about. So what I would like to do between now and next week is to invite you all to I carry this on and think, okay, the story I need to tell needs to be framed using or even introduced using what's it about. And then I need to give people a clear idea of what I'm talking about by giving them a movie time. So it's effectively what you're saying is, like, I've done a little script here, like, it's about ... and then you use what's it about. For example, or just imagine. Okay, so that's kind of basic framing. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to come back next week and with that worked through example, where you've got a clear, strong movie and a clear, strong what's it about, or maybe even 2 movies. You can have a movie before and a movie after, 2 different movies. Okay, so you come back with that. What we'll do next week is we'll talk about story hooks. And what a story hook does is it focuses our attention. By next week, you've got a story that's worth telling. But we are busy, busy people, and we will scroll past you in 3 seconds. That's the reality. Or if in 15 seconds talking to you face to face, you've not hooked us, we're looking around the room to see who else is there. So that's the reality. So next week, we'll take the stories you're going to work on this week, and we'll add a story hook. And then your challenge next week will be to be able to go hook, theme, story in 60 seconds. Right. And that's a real challenge. So unless anyone's got any comments or questions you want to come back to right away, I'm going to pause the recording there. Okay, let me find it. Where's the pause? Hold on. I'm going to stop recording.